The paperwork said the car was flawless. The odometer said 12,000 miles. Both were lies, and the woman signing her name at the bottom of that contract was about to lose $400,000 to a smile and a handshake. Her name was Eleanor Voss, and by every measure the world used to define success, she had already won. She had built a shipping logistics empire from a single rented warehouse into a company that moved cargo across 3 continents. Magazines put her face on their covers. Business schools taught her strategies in first-year seminars. But none of that mattered on the Tuesday afternoon she stood in a gleaming dealership showroom in her tailored coat, staring at a car that was supposed to be a gift to herself for surviving one more brutal year, and slowly realizing that the confident salesman across the desk was lying to her face, and had been lying to her for weeks. If you believe people deserve kindness, and you believe in second chances even for those the world has written off, take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs a reminder that decency still exists, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this one. Now let's get back to Eleanor. It had started 3 months earlier, when Eleanor decided she wanted a classic restored roadster, something with soul, something that didn't come with a computer chip for a heart. She visited 4 different dealerships across the city, each one more polished than the last, each one staffed with men who saw a wealthy woman walking in alone and mistook her composure for ignorance. The first dealership sold her a car with a rebuilt engine block and told her it was original. The second sold her one with flood damage papered over by a fresh interior. The third quietly rolled back an odometer. The fourth, the one she was sitting in now, was selling her a car that had been in a collision so severe the frame had been bent and straightened, a fact buried under 3 layers of touch-up paint and a very convincing story about a previous owner who babied it in a garage for years. Eleanor was brilliant, but she was not a mechanic. She had spent her life reading balance sheets and shipping manifests, not torque specifications and frame alignments. She trusted the glossy brochures and the men in pressed shirts who called her ma'am, with just enough warmth to disarm her and just enough condescension to assume she wouldn't ask the right questions. And for months, she didn't. She simply paid, and drove away, and told herself that maybe this was what it felt like to finally enjoy the money she'd worked herself half to death to earn. That same week, across town in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, a man named Marcus Reyes was doing what he did every night, making sure his 8-year-old daughter, Nora, finished her homework before he left for his second job. Marcus had been a mechanic for 18 years, the kind who could diagnose a failing transmission by sound alone, the kind who used to run his own small garage until his wife passed away 3 years earlier and the medical bills swallowed the business whole. Now he worked days under other people's cars for hourly wages, and nights stocking shelves at a grocery store, and in between he was raising Nora by himself, packing her lunches, braiding her hair badly but lovingly, and falling asleep some nights still wearing his work boots. Marcus didn't know Eleanor Voss existed. Their worlds were not supposed to intersect. But fate has a strange sense of timing, and it arranged for Eleanor's 4th dealership purchase, the one with the hidden frame damage, to break down on a rainy overpass exactly 2 miles from the auto shop where Marcus was finishing a late shift. When Eleanor called for help, soaked and furious and strangely humiliated in a way her money had never prepared her for, it was Marcus who answered the shop's emergency line, because everyone else had already gone home to their families, and he needed the extra hours more than he needed rest. He arrived in a tow truck that had seen better decades, hood dented, paint faded, radio held together with electrical tape. Eleanor almost didn't get in. She looked at this tired-looking man in a stained jacket and made the same quiet, unconscious judgment that the dealerships had made about her, deciding in an instant what someone was worth based on how they appeared. But the rain was heavy and her phone battery was dying and there was something steady in his eyes that made her trust him despite herself. At the shop, under fluorescent lights at nearly midnight, Marcus popped the hood without asking a single unnecessary question. He didn't perform confidence the way the salesman had. He simply worked, hands moving with the quiet certainty of someone who had done this 10,000 times, someone who had learned to read a car the way a doctor reads a patient's chart. And within 20 minutes, his face changed. He asked Eleanor when she bought the car, how much she paid, whether anyone had shown her a full inspection report. She answered honestly, growing more uneasy with every question, because she was beginning to sense that something was deeply wrong. Marcus led her back outside, took a work light, and showed her the underside of the frame near the front axle. He pointed to weld marks that didn't match factory patterns, to a faint ripple in the metal that no paint job could fully hide, to a chassis number that had clearly been altered. He explained, gently but plainly, that this car had been in a serious accident, that the frame had been bent and forced back into shape, that it was not safe to drive at highway speeds, and that whoever sold it to her had known all of this and hidden it deliberately. He wasn't dramatic about it. He didn't try to impress her. He simply told her the truth, the way he would have told anyone, because to him a person was a person whether they arrived in a limousine or a rusted sedan. Eleanor stood in that garage at midnight, mascara smudged from the rain, and felt something crack open inside her that had nothing to do with the car. She realized that in 3 months, across 4 dealerships, dozens of employees, and hundreds of thousands of dollars, not one person with a nice suit and a framed sales award had told her the truth. It took a single father working a second job past midnight, a man with grease under his fingernails and exhaustion in his shoulders, to be the only honest voice in the entire process. She asked him why he told her, when he could have simply fixed what he was asked to fix and said nothing more. Marcus looked almost confused by the question, as if honesty had never seemed like a choice to him at all. He said something she would remember for the rest of her life, that his daughter was watching him build a life, and he wanted her to see a father who did the right thing even when nobody was checking. Eleanor did not simply thank him and disappear into her wealth the next morning. She returned 3 days later, this time in daylight, and asked Marcus to walk her through every one of her 4 purchases. Together they inspected each vehicle, and one by one, the lies unraveled. She filed formal complaints, backed by Marcus's documented findings, and for the first time, 4 separate dealerships that had built their business on quietly exploiting people's trust were forced to answer for it publicly. Local news picked up the story. Consumer protection offices opened investigations. It became, briefly, the kind of scandal that makes an entire industry nervous. But the story that mattered most wasn't the exposed dealerships. It was what Eleanor did next. She didn't simply write Marcus a generous check and move on, though she did make sure he was fairly and significantly compensated for what he'd done. She sat with him, really sat with him, and listened to his story, about his late wife, about the garage he lost, about Nora and the exhausting choreography of raising a child alone while working 2 jobs just to stay afloat. And Eleanor, who had spent a lifetime building things, decided to help him build something too. She quietly financed the reopening of his own repair shop, not as charity, but as a genuine business partnership, insisting that his name go on the sign, that he keep full ownership and full control. She only asked for one thing in return, that his shop train other single parents in the trade, so that other Marcuses could find steady, dignified work instead of falling through the same cracks he almost fell through. If this story moved something in you, if it reminded you that decency still exists in the most unexpected places, please take a second to hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs a little hope today. It genuinely helps this story reach more hearts. And before we close this chapter, I want to ask you something. Somewhere in your life, there was probably a person like Marcus, someone who told you the truth when a lie would have been easier, someone who helped you without expecting anything back. Comment their name below, or just a few words about them, right now, before you go. Let's fill this space with the quiet heroes the world too often overlooks. 6 months later, Marcus Reyes Auto Repair had a hand-painted sign above the door, a waiting list of customers who valued honesty over flash, and a small photo taped near the register of Nora grinning in her father's old work jacket. Eleanor still stopped by sometimes, not as a billionaire visiting a project, but as a friend checking in, often bringing Nora a book or sitting with her while she did homework at the front counter. Eleanor had spent her life negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts, but she would later say that the most important deal of her life had no paperwork at all. It was made under fluorescent lights, at midnight, in a rundown garage, when a tired single father chose truth over convenience, and in doing so, quietly changed both of their lives forever.